really just want to emphasize, there's no hard and fast rules about customer success. It's not like, well, I watched this webinar, I heard an interview with Donna, or read a book, or, this other company is doing this. There's no like, oh, this is the way to do customer success. It really, there's definitely best practices, but it really needs to be what works for your customers and your product and your team. And as a result, I highly recommend you take the time to listen to your customers to find out what they want and need, because it might not be what you're trying to throw at them.
Hello and welcome to the whole new episode of Engati CX. I'm your host Bhushan, and we are really glad to have all of you join us today. On this show, we talk to CX and technology experts from around the world. We explore, uncover, and share fresh insights on creating experiences that our customers will remember and look forward to. Engati is world's multilingual no-code digital CX platform, available across 14 channels with 45,000 solutions created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc. magazine, Tech World, CIO magazine, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati 6 podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest. Donna Webber is the President and Customer Onboarding Leader at Springboard Solutions. Donna is recognized as a customer success thought leader, strategist, and influencer. She helps high-growth companies create customers for life. She works towards decreasing customer time for the first value, maximize customer lifetime value, increase product usage and adoption, and also help scale customer success. Welcome to the show, Donna.
Thank you so much, Bhushan.
But before we dive into the interview, don't forget to subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon to get access to exclusive content from thought leaders around the globe. Should we start with the questions, Donna?
Yes, let's dive in.
Great. So what is the biggest customer onboarding challenge? What can businesses do to identify and solve them?
Yeah, well, first of all, what is customer onboarding and why is it so important? Customer onboarding is really helping your customers become familiar with your product and start to adopt it and use it. And now that's really important because if they're not using your product, you don't have a license to renew. And the biggest challenge I see is that most companies equate onboarding with implementation. So while going live with your product is important, onboarding doesn't begin or end there, because onboarding is a critical time to engage with your customers, to build trust and to build relationships, because it's relationships, companies, your customers renew because of relationships. And when your customers are going through the sales cycle, your sales reps are building all this really important relationship collateral and trust. And if you close the deal and just drive right into implementing the product and focusing on the go live, which is looking at, project plans and checklists and APIs and data migration and customizations and branding and all of these things that are fraught with challenges, then you haven't taken the time to capture success outcomes and the goals and the value that they want to achieve. So I really encourage companies to slow down and to build relationships with people and not just to focus on the technology.
Couldn't agree more, Donna. It's so important to companies actually start focusing on their customer experience and not just their technology, because just having technology and not even thinking about your customers' experience and what they go through it's like worthless, right? So cannot agree more on that point. Moving on to the second question. How can we recognize, evaluate, and rectify customer onboarding metrics?
The onboarding metrics are great leading indicators. So there's lagging indicators and leading indicators. A lot of companies are focused very rightly on lagging indicators, but those may take time. So lagging indicators are things like renewal rates and net retention and recurring revenue. And of course, those are the metrics that drive your business and are really important. But they're not going to tell you whether your onboarding program is impactful. So then we want to look at things like, product usage. Maybe you sold, let's just say 50 seats to your product. You might have some metric around number of active users, let's say in the first 30 days. You might want to get like at least 50% of those users active in the product. So looking at product usage, active users, there might be, you might check support tickets. If they're, you don't want them logging too many because that shows that they're struggling. But if they don't log any at all, it shows they're not engaged with the product. So some realistic amount there. Are they engaged with the customer training? So those are some things, are the CSMs, if you have customer success managers in a more higher touch engagement, are they engaged? Are they moving along a defined journey with some key milestones in the product? So those are all things. There's no like one metric that I would say that's the killer metric, but it's really dependent on your product and your users. If you have a customer health score, are there some things you can start to measure early on? So those would be things that I would look at. Oh, also, how long does it take for them to move through onboarding in each stage of onboarding? I recommend companies kind of get a baseline of what that customer onboarding, how long it takes. And then, when I work with them to optimize their onboarding framework, then we can look at how we can start to improve that, because many companies I work with, they get a new deal, it's awesome, but then the reality is that they're spending so much time and money implementing the product, most of their margin disappears.
Very true. It's important to see your ROIs, right? Moving over to the third question, Donna. Are there any digital tools that help ease out customer onboarding? What are your views on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always start with process. So first, most of the companies I work with are either in a very ad hoc reactive phase, or they're in a very high touch, kind of every customer is a special snowflake stage. So what I'd like to do is help them build a more scalable process. And we get very clear on kind of what's going to work for them and their customers, what customers need to get to those value moments. And then we look at, well, who's doing what? So then we add in the people component. And then if appropriate, then we look at the right technology. So for example, I'm working with a company that has a big data platform, and they are moving to drive 50% of their customers into a self-service model. So for that, I believe like an in-app chat would be really helpful, and in-app guidance would be really helpful. So so they can really scale with technology. Another company I worked with where it was much more high touch, but then I recommended a tool to really operationalize the onboarding process so that everyone knows what they're doing when, and also it keeps customers accountable so customers have that visibility. But I would never just say we need technology and that's going to solve all of our onboarding problems. Technology is usually the last thing, because then it makes the people and the processes more efficient, but it doesn't solve the problem. Storing technology doesn't fix anything if you don't have the right process. It might just even create more problems.
Yeah. Moving over to the fourth question, Donna. What is the status of onboarding getting automated? How can we include artificial intelligence elements to form a blended and strong workflow?
Well, absolutely. So when I conducted a survey in 2020, and I have a report on my website you can see, which is the Customer Onboarding Report of 2020. Most customer success teams are wanting some more automation for onboarding. So before we even start talking about AI, you might leverage something like a learning management tool, learning management system, which can provide learning pathways by role. So you can start to drive users along a journey of what they need when they need it. In-app guidance is a great tool we talked about. So users are getting that in-product guidance, but it really, again, depends on your product and on your customers, because some companies, some products are very complex and they do really need a high-touch engagement, and it's not about automation at all. Other companies I've worked with, it's completely automated. So there's no one way. And then you might have different segments that they get different levels of touch depending on the segment. And I just want to interject there that, most people think, well, if we need if the company needs high touch, it's usually those enterprise customers, those larger customers. But just because they're large doesn't mean high touch is appropriate for them. Oftentimes, it's their smallest customers that need more help because they don't have the resources internally necessarily to implement and make the best use of the product. So I encourage companies to consider maybe those smaller companies need a higher touch and even managed services. So, for example, they might not have a dedicated admin, and they would benefit from having admin services where they pay your company to do the administrative work for them. One company I talked with, they told me that every customer would have a roadblock when they were implementing because of the data migration, and they were like, "Oh, we need to create training for this." And when I learned that it was just a one-off event during implementation, they never had to do this again. I said, just charge them for that. Bundle it into the fee, take care of that problem, remove that barrier to success. So there's a case for high touch. But then for automation, yeah, there's absolutely ways we can build in-app guidance. And if you can use AI and ML to understand where users are in the journey and to provide them that right guidance at the right time, then all the better. But it needs to be accurate and impactful. So let's say this company, this big data company I'm working with, they've got data engineers and administrators and data scientists in each of those roles, and data analysts, and each of those roles are doing different things in the platform. So if there's a way that there's like some AI that can help identify what their role is, and really just by knowing their role, take them on their unique path to value, that would be really awesome.
That's a really good point you raise. It's not usually the big companies that need most of your guidance. It's the smaller companies who are actually looking forward to your guidance, right? Because they don't have enough resources to actually do that, and that's where you come in place and you can help them out with that. Very true.
Yeah, I really just want to emphasize, there's no hard and fast rules about customer success. It's not like, well, I watched this webinar, I heard an interview with Donna, or read a book, or this other company is doing this. There's no like, oh, this is the way to do customer success. It really, there's definitely best practices, but it really needs to be what works for your customers and your product and your team. And as a result, I highly recommend you take the time to listen to your customers, to find out what they want and need, because it might not be what you're trying to throw at them. So, when you interview customers, you hear what their trends are. So, for example, this big data company, what we learned is that, customers they want to do a lot of self-service, but they also, because their platform's so complex, they want to be able to ask questions and then get answers when they need them. So then how do we, in a self-service model, apply this high-touch engagement when they need it? And that's where something like in-app chat, which might be, a bot or a person or both, that's where something like that might, having this like high-touch moment at just the right time could be really transformational.
Very true, Donna. Donna, moving over to our last question. Any other soundbites you would like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, the soundbite I'd like to leave you with is that onboarding matters more than you may think. That the beginning of relationships is key, and that's we all know that first impressions matter, and that people, immediately kind of lock in their judgment of others from those first impressions. So that's why it's so important we take the time to connect, to show users the path to success, to partner with them, to keep them accountable so that we're all successful. Because when our customers win, we win.
Yeah, we live in such a good note. If customers win, the businesses win. That's a very valid point. Thank you so much for giving us your time, Donna. Your insights were really valuable, and I know our audience is going to enjoy this interview because I surely did. We will be back with a new episode with a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned, and we will see you around for the next one.